All right, I think we've got everybody connected. So good morning. My name is Colleen DeLang. I am the Director of Education here at My Real Source. The reason I love this class is this is a tool I actually use as a realtor of the last 25 years. As a matter of fact, I just listed a house yesterday using this. I think if you take the time to prepare for your listing appointment and do a few of the things that I'm going to show you here today, you can always walk away with the listing. So that's where we're going to get started. If you do have any questions today, we try to make this as interactive as possible. Wanted to let you know too, our hybrid classroom just opened back up, so you'll be hearing more about that. So if you're looking for more live classes where you can actually come into a classroom and get help, those will be added to the calendar starting next month, end of next month. So excited about that. But we want to encourage you to ask questions today as well. So if you're new to GoToWebinar, all you have to do to type in a question is open up your GoToWebinar panel and you'll see questions. Simply go into that questions box and type in, let's say you had a question about adding custom pages to your CMA or something like that. We're going to go at a pretty good clip today. I'm going to basically show you everything you need to know about using Cloud CMA. And I do want to let you know, because there's always a little confusion about this, there are actually two Cloud CMA classes. There is this class, which we show you everything soup to nuts on making a CMA, what it's going to look like, the different interactive tools that you can use that are in Cloud right now. But then I designed a class about all the other functionality that's in Cloud CMA, like property flyers, property reports, turn-by-turn driving directions, and so much more that you can do in Cloud. So there's two classes. This is going to be the Cloud CMA class, but then there's another class called Cloud CMA, CMAs, and Beyond. And that's really where we get into more of the property flyers, property reports. You can create buyer tours and a lot of other things too. But with that, I'm going to turn off my fuzzy hair and we're going to get right into Cloud. And I kind of like to show this backwards. So I'm going to show you the listing that I just listed yesterday, and I'm going to show you what I include in my CMA. I'm going to also show you some brand new things that I just created probably maybe a week ago that you can add into your CMA with your own, with your custom name, your information. I was looking for more marketing pieces that we could make available to our members that they could just literally put their name on it, and places like what you syndicate to. A lot of people will ask you on your listing appointment, well, is my home going to be on Zillow? Is it going to be on Realtor.com? So those were things I wanted to have right in my CMA. So as I was handling those objections and looking at those questions that the homeowners were asking, I just wanted a page that had all of the sites and where they were going to be. And that way they didn't always have to ask that question. I could actually address it when I'm going through my CMA. So we're also going to cover a lot of things of how to bring those outside documents like tax records and market stats, what's going on in their market, how to bring those into your CMA as well. All right, so with that, I'm going to just take you on a little tour, but I am going to kind of teach this class backwards. I'm actually going to show you the finished product first, so what it's going to look like. And then from there, I am going to show you exactly step-by-step how to create that. So hopefully that makes sense, but there's no reason if you don't like the finished product, then you don't want to take the time to actually learn how to do it step-by-step, right? So I'm going to actually show you step-by-step how to do it, but first I want to show you that finished product and what it's going to look like. All right, so with that, I'm going to turn off my fuzzy hair and I'm going to share my screen. A lot of familiar names. Hello, Mary. Nice to see you joining us. All right. So one quick thing, if I can have just anybody on our call today, just let me know that you can see my screen and hear me okay. That would be great. There's nothing worse than I make all these class recordings available, but there's nothing worse than finding out nobody could hear you or see you, you know, and you're a little ways into the class. So if anybody could just type in that questions box real quick, yeah, we can see and hear you. We'll just go ahead and get started. Anybody? If you can't hear me, that would be a problem. All right, well, Oh, perfect. Thank you so much, Valerie. I appreciate it. The other day, there was no audio and I did not realize that till I was a couple of minutes in. So thanks so much. I appreciate it. All right. So again, where we're going to start today is I'm going to show you the finished CMA. Cloud CMA can simply be found under resources. So I'm going to simply go under resources in Paragon. By the way, if my Paragon looks a little bit different than yours, don't worry. It's just because where I am at my real source, every broker can customize that center section. And you can also pick different themes. So I happen to be ready for summer, and I'm going to go with that summer theme. And I'm going to go up to resources, and I'm going to go to Cloud CMA. Now, Cloud CMA will keep and store all of your CMAs. I think I have about 15 pages over the 25 years. I have actually used 7 different CMA programs. And I will tell you that by far, Cloud makes the best presentation. And I will also tell you that it's the easiest for the agent and it's easy on the client. It sort of makes sense in the order that they put it in. So let's actually take a look at that finished product. So I'm going to open the house I listed yesterday, happens to be in Washington Township. And I'm just going to open this up all the way so you can kind of see it a little bit better. Cloud CMA does give you an overhead shot, but I'm going to show you a quick tip where you can literally grab that photo from public records and make this great looking cover for your CMA. On average, my CMA takes me about 7 minutes to create. Hardest part of your CMA really is picking the comparables, finding like comparables right now, right in Paragon. That is generally the hardest part of the CMA. You can add different cover letters, but what I did here is I actually just went to my company website and I simply copied and pasted what we had in the company website right into my template. So every single time I'm using Cloud CMA, it's already here. I don't have to do anything. This page automatically appears. They do have some pre-written marketing pieces, like what is a CMA? I'm going to be honest, I don't generally use this page because that's what I'm there for. I'm going to explain what a comparative market analysis is, but you can create a contact me page. It will also give them a map of where their comparables came from. So as you can see, I tried to stay in 1 square mile, which is what an appraiser would do in this area. And it does give you the breakdown of the comparables. So I can see price per square foot very easily, as well as pending and active and sold listings. But I like the way it presents the comps. When I was at my listing appointment, they asked me, well, did Miriam have a finished basement? Well, I like the fact that I can add either the first photo, 12 photos, or all the photos. So that's a choice. You can actually, if you're going to print it, you might not want to have 99 photos that you have to print. But I do like to add the photos and max data. And that way, if they ask me a question about, did they have a finished basement or, did that home have a garage? I have all the photos to actually go through with them. It does have an analysis chapter as well, and it breaks those down, price per square foot, average days on market. But what I like is that you can choose which of these pieces you want to use and which you don't. So in this particular case, things were selling still at 104% of what they were listed at. So we know it's selling slightly over asking. There were some days we were seeing 120%, right? Now we're seeing 104%, and our average, excuse me, is 5 days on market. Now, again, in going through this, this particular home had $50,000 they added in hardscape in the back. It was absolutely beautiful. They built this beautiful stairway out of hardscape and a built-in fire pit and 4 patios, and it happens to actually be on almost an acre of land in Washington Township. So I had to give additional value for some of that. I'm going to show you some tools that you can use to figure out what additional value is based on that parcel. That was always something I kind of struggled with, I'll be honest. I wish I was like that Joanna Gaines, who I think it's so cool. She walks in and she can say, okay, we're going to knock out this wall and we're going to do this and it's going to bring like 40 grand of value. I cannot do that. I don't know how much it would cost to redo a kitchen. And I don't know how much, if you did redo your kitchen, how much value does that bring? But I'm going to show you some tools today where you can actually figure it out for that specific home. And why that's so important is, let's face it, I'm going to use Mary because she does a ton of listings, way more than I do. But let's say Mary's listing a home in California. If they put 50 grand into a kitchen remodel in California, it's going to be worth a heck of a lot more than if that same $50,000 was poured into a Clinton Township kitchen. I know that probably makes sense, right? So how do you figure out what those adjustments are? What positive or negative value? Maybe you have the only home in the subdivision without a garage. How do you figure out what that negative value is for not having a garage? So I'm going to show you where you can use those tools here to figure out some of those. Maybe you've got an extra bathroom. Maybe your home has a pole barn. There can be a lot of different things that can add. This home actually does have a pole barn. And so I needed to figure out, what is that worth? But what is it worth based on this property, not another property, in another city? Hopefully that makes sense. So there are, again, as I mentioned, some marketing pages that are already pre-written, but it's really your choice what you want to include. There's everything under the sun, like why you need a real estate professional, pricing it right, intelligent pricing and timing. I'm going to be honest, these are not things I use. They're there and they're great. And if you have an instance where maybe you do want to use them, you can add them in very quickly. Me, I'm kind of a meat and potatoes girl. I just really want to show them what their house is worth, how long it's going to take to sell, what those comps are. But there's a whole lot of stuff here if you want to add that in as well. So it's really just how long do you want your CMA to be? I don't want to be there for years presenting it. And like I said, the average time it takes me to make a CMA is usually between 7 and 9 minutes. So it is not hard. The hardest part is really just finding the comparables in Paragon or the MLS. All right, so some other things I want to show you. As mentioned, this class is really designed to show you some of the new features. They have a new live interactive CMA. And I got to be honest, at first I thought, why would you want to do that? Now I am hooked and I love it. And here's why. There were so many times, and I had this not that long ago, it was an older client, so I had my CMA report all printed out, and I wanted, to leave behind a copy, and had my suggested list price, and I'm going into the home, and I literally, kid you not, you can't make this up in real estate. If you've been in real estate any short amount of time, you've got good stories already. But I had gone, driven by, took a picture of the home from the outside, and I was going to one-step this listing because it was perfect. Every flower was planted in a perfect little row. The shutters were painted. It was a cute little red brick ranch. It was absolutely a dollhouse from the outside. So I put together my CMA and my suggested list price and bound it all together. It looked all nice. And then I literally kicked off my shoes, as I generally do when I'm going in for a listing appointment. And I stepped into, and I kid you not, Grover blue shag carpeting, right? The real thick old, if you know what I'm talking about. And every single wall, I'm not kidding, had those Brady Bunch flowers on it, the stick-on decals. And I know they say the 70s is coming back, but it ain't ever coming this far back. So all of a sudden, I'm in the bathroom trying to rip out my suggested price, right? Because now I realize from the outside, it was all updated, but the inside had never been touched since it was built in 1971. And so now I've based it on the comps, but I can clearly see that there's a lot of updating. So I'm in the bathroom trying to rip out my page. You don't have to do that with the new interactive. The new interactive, you can make those changes on the fly. You can go in and put a new suggested price. And that's not even my favorite thing about it. In the new interactive version, if they said to you, so let's say they're sitting with Mary, and they said, well, Mary, I see these comps, but what about Joe Fumagali's house down the street? That one closed recently, and I don't see that in your CMA. And Mary, well, now she's trying to go through the app and, and what was the address? What street is it on, right? And usually we don't choose that comp because it's not like the subject property. Many times they're asking you, well, they're in a 1,300 square foot brick ranch, right? And they're asking you why you didn't use a 5,000 square foot colonial, right? They don't understand how we're coming up with these comps. But Mary's sitting there and she wants to make sure, that he understands why we may not have used that comp. The new live interactive version allows you to see every home around that home, and you can click on it, and with one click you can add it. Maybe it closed. Maybe Mary, she's always way ahead. She did her CMA 2 days ago, and this closed yesterday. It could be something simple like that. So you can, with one click, add that in. So let's take a look at the new version. The thing to note is you make them exactly the same. So it's the same steps to either make it in a PDF or make it in that interactive version. The only difference is, how do you want to present them? Now, the interactive version, if I'm going to meet with a 90-year-old homeowner, that might not be the way I want to go. Maybe I just want to simply print off my PDF, or maybe I just want to go through it on my laptop and email them a copy at the end, which you can do too. However, this new interactive version has some very cool features. So let's take a look at that next. So again, we've made the CMA the exact same way. The only difference here is that we're going to click, instead of view the PDF, we're going to click view live. When I click on that, it's basically opening up that new interactive version. I'm going to shrink this down a little bit so you can see a little bit more on your screen there. In the interactive version, you could just start at the bottom and click Start Presentation, and you could go through it from beginning to end. But what I like is, if you have a seller, this particular seller is getting ready to relocate to another state, and they're down there a lot trying to find their new home. So being able to present their CMA to them, I can actually do that via Zoom. I can go to the bottom. I can present it via Zoom, via Microsoft Teams, via Skype, via Google Hangouts, or even Screen. And if you don't know what Screen is, don't worry. It's just the maker of Slack. They actually have an online sharing too. This allows you to present your CMA even if they're not sitting next to you. You could just start presentation and go through it, but I want to show you some of the highlights here. And that really falls more in the comparables. For so long, I would always go in and I would put notes, like sticky notes on the homes. Like this one had central air, this one didn't, this one had an additional bathroom, or this one had an additional, space in the garage. And what this does is it actually highlights those things right on the report for you. As you can see, this one had a 2-car garage. This one has a 2.5-car garage. And it highlights that this one had more square footage or less square footage. This one's 40% less in square footage. So it's actually showing us that right here. It's going to show us which one is closest, which one's most expensive. Now, I've added in the active and pending, but remember, we're always basing our actual numbers over the closed dollar volume. That's what we're looking at. I only have, do we have to add? No, that's a great question. So someone asked, I only use Zoom. Do we have to use the other ones? And absolutely not. If you're really comfortable with Zoom, then you can totally just use that. And you can set it up so that you Zoom with them and you go through them. You don't have to use the other ones. Some people like certain products over another. They've built the integration with all of those, just in case you prefer one over the other. I too really, really like Zoom. I really like GoToWebinar and Zoom. I think sometimes when you're using larger features like mapping and things like that, sometimes it's easier to use programs like GoToWebinar and Zoom over the other ones listed, because they tend to be more responsive and quicker, and it doesn't take as long to open. So that's a really good question. Thank you. No, it's not going to allow you to present it over. You could share it to Facebook. You could share it to Messenger if you wanted to. But it's basically set up to just do the live streaming. So you could email it, you could share it on Facebook, you could share it on Messenger with someone, but the live streaming, meaning that you can talk to them while you're sharing it, would just be the ones that I showed. So I hope I answered that question correctly. Donald, if I didn't, nope, there were several options, but let me go back. All right, so right down here, and it's at the bottom of your screen, these are the ones that have the automatic live streaming. The other ones are after you create it, you would share it that way. So this is different. There's two different things here. Sharing would be like sharing to Facebook, sharing to Messenger, which I'll show you once we create our CMA. This is if you wanted to present the CMA like we're doing here live, where you could talk to them and you would be doing it in a live streaming way. So two different things. One is sharing the report, which I'll go over once we create the report. I'll show you how to share it. This is if you've made the report and you literally want to talk to them like I'm talking to you, and that you can see them, they can see you, they can ask questions, and that's where you could literally go through it live. So a little bit different, but very good question. Keep them coming. Okay, so when you're looking at these properties, I'm just going to close this so you can see them all. My subject properties here on the left, and then over here we have our comparables. Again, it's highlighting the differences, it's showing the statuses, highlighting the differences, and basically stacking them on top of each other so that we can go through them. However, let's use Donald in this example. Donald is sitting with his client, and his client says, well, Donald, what about that house over there on Valley Green? I don't see that. I happen to know he's a friend of mine, and I don't see that in your comparables map. What about that? I'm trying to find Valley Green kind of quickly. What about that house over there on Valley Green? Well, Donald can actually zoom in onto the map. He can find that home on Valley Green. As you can see, it highlights each one of those red dots is a listing. It goes back, I think, 10 years. And then I can click on it and I can say, well, actually, I didn't use that particular home. Well, this is a pretty nice home to grab because it's over $1 million for one, and two, it's newer construction, and three, it's almost 4,000 square feet and you have 2,000. So it allows you to see that right from here. So instead of saying, well, wait, let me look that up, trying to find your phone, trying to get into another app, trying to get that information, you can actually do that right from here. Just by clicking on the map, you can see those additional homes. So here we have our Miriam. If I wanted to add that, let's say that I missed this comp though, or let's say that this closed yesterday, we finally have a sold price here, and I do want to add that in. I can simply toggle that property, and just like that, I've adjusted my price and I've used that comp. So now when I go back to my comparables that we just looked at a minute ago, you can see this Miriam property. It's actually showing up right here. And I can now go through that with my client, and I can add, and that will adjust, by the way, automatically what those stats are, what that price per square foot is. Now you can see Miriam is added in here. It's telling me that that was $173 per square foot. Average was 6 on market, what the main details are. If I didn't want to use that, maybe I find it's not a good comparable, again, I can always deselect it and it's going to change that value again. So easy ways to make those changes on the fly. One of the other things that you can do in this versus the PDF version is you can also add your testimonials. Well, you can add testimonials in both, but you can do video testimonials. You can do a video resume if you wanted to. So this actually has a little bit more capability to add in links and more of a way to customize it. So if you wanted to maybe deliver your market plan, or maybe you've got a little video shaking hands in front of the sign talking about, how you got a cash offer for your seller in, 2 days, and, you're going to close in 7, something like that. If you have a video like that, then you can actually use that as your video resume, and you can actually insert that here. So a whole lot you can do. I don't want to spend too much time in here because I want to go over how to make the CMA. But I did want to show you how easy it is to simply click on that map. You're going to zoom in. That's going to throw in all that MLS data for you. And if you need to add a comparable, or maybe you just want to, again, maybe you just want to take a look at the comparable, this allows me to see it right from here, and I can decide if I wanted to add that as a comp or not. All right. So if that looks good to you, if you're excited to see, you like the way the finished product looks, now you're looking to build one. Again, whether you present it in a PDF fashion or you present it, maybe you're going to put it on Facebook, like Donald suggested. Maybe you're going to just share it to their Messenger page. Maybe you're going to email some. Really, the only difference is you're making them the exact same way. It's just how do you want to share it? How do you want it to look? Do you want that new trendy look where you have that interactive map and you have those differences highlighted for you? Or are you looking to do maybe more of a PDF? All right, so let's talk about how we get there. So in order to create your CMA, it's really about finding the like comparables. Obviously, you want to keep it apples to apples whenever possible. And I'm going to give you the basics, but please keep in mind, if you are, I happen to live out in Richmond, and it's very rural north of me. And so there are times I can't use the basics. Sometimes I have to expand my search from 1 mile to 3 miles. I'm going to show you some of those appraiser guidelines, though, that you need to know when you're coming up with your comparables. So in the first case, and actually I had a really good example I wanted to share today, because I had a friend of mine, she's pretty new in real estate. She's only been licensed, I think, maybe 2 years, but she really hit the ground running. I mean, she's sold quite a few properties, but she was listing a home in Armada. And the biggest problem was nothing around that home had the acreage that this home had. It was just a little 700 square foot home. And quite honestly, the value wasn't even in the home. And she said, she called me, it's like 9:30 at night. She said, she was almost in tears. She said, I don't understand. How do I figure out this home? There's no other home that has acreage like this. It's a very unique home. And what we ended up doing is we ended up breaking it out. We ended up breaking out the home and then figuring out what acreage was going for. And then she let the little detail slip of, and it's farmland. And one of the neighbors uses it to farm. So now we have 3 factors. We have the home, the residential side. We had farmland, which is farm acreage. And then we had vacant land. So what we did is we actually got a price for the home. We could find similar comparables for the home. That wasn't a problem. But then, because we needed to compare farmland and acreage, we actually used this multi-class search. And let me explain what this is. If I'm just looking for a single family home and I'm looking for those comps, then that would be, of course, residential. And if I'm just looking for vacant land, well, that makes sense, right? But I'm looking for 3 different separate classes. I'm looking for farm, I'm looking for vacant land, and in this case, I also did residential. So for me, all I did is I went to the multi-class search and I was able to compare farmland and vacant land, and that's how we came up with our price for each of the 10, I think it was 9.5 acres. And then so we found another parcel that had 9.5 acres, or a few actually, and then we figured out on average what that acreage was going for. So we had to do a little more work on that one, but I wanted to let you know that's here in case you have a scenario like that where there's no like comps and maybe it has acreage. That's when you want to use that multi-class. And what that does is it basically says, I'm going to search over all of these for you, so you don't have to make 3 different searches. So it's kind of cool. But today we're going to keep it nice and easy. So we're going to say that we are listing a single family home. If you're kind of new to Paragon, remember, if there is a field that you don't know what it's calling for, all you want to do is go over to the right. There's a magnifying glass, and you're just going to select what you're looking for. So in this case, this is where you could look for farmland. This is also where you could, maybe you have a buyer who just wants condos. This is where you would make that distinction of what type of single family home. In this case, we're just going to do a single family home. And if my fields look a little bit different, I was just teaching in Detroit the other day, and I added the zip code field. Remember, if there's something distinct about your property that you don't see in the fields, like in Detroit, they were saying, Colleen, Detroit is so big, we cannot search just that way. We need to be able to break it down and filter it by zip code to divide it a little bit better. And so you can add in the zip code field. There are 4,000 different fields you can choose from. So if you're not seeing acreage in your list, you can add acreage. If there's some piece of information that's unique about this particular property, don't be afraid to go to customize fields and add that field in. Okay. All right. So I'm trying to determine obviously what the sale price is going to be. And really, the closed value is what's most important. But back in the day, 25 years ago, when I got my license, I was lucky enough to meet a man named Floyd Wickman. Probably on this call, nobody will know who that is, but he was a great and really funny real estate coach in the 90s. And he always taught me that, Colleen, if you're going to take the time of a seller, then you better have figured out what the actives are near them and the pendings, because they know their neighborhood. And if you're not including those, it's going to look like, oh, she doesn't even know that this particular property is on the market. So you do want to include actives and pendings, but obviously we are deriving our number from closed. That's the one that's going to give the number that we need. Now, not so much in this market, but in 25 years, you know what happens, right? We have good markets and bad. I remember in 2007 and 2008, we had 6 years of inventory. For the last couple of years, we had 6 days. Sometimes at some points it was 6 hours of inventory. But basically, good market and bad, right? It's going to change at some point. One of the things Floyd Wickman taught me, and which I will never forget and has helped me so many times, is when the seller wants to overprice their home, and they'll say stupid stuff like, well, Colleen, you can't see it, but behind this wall, we used golden nails, and we think we should get $50,000 more because of the golden nails, which no one's going to see or care about, right? You get what I'm saying. One person had this, it was the most hideous, terrible, but it was like this gold lame flooring, and it made me cringe. But to them, they got it from Italy. To them, it was the most beautiful thing ever. It didn't match a thing in the house, but it was beautiful to them. So they thought, because of that flooring, that they should get an additional $25,000 for their house. Now, I'm going to tell you, most people coming through the door are probably going to rip that flooring out. They're never going to know what it is, but to them, it was important. So how do you, one, get them to price the home appropriately? And two, how do you do that in a tactful way so that you still end up walking away with the listing? So a case in point, let's say Mary's going on her listing appointment. And Mary's, presenting her price, and she says, okay, well, I think it's going to be, around 300,000. And they say, well, you know what, Mary, we like your suggestion, but we want to start at 400,000 because, it's that kind of market and we just want to test it. And he always taught me to have one comp tucked away, not in your CMA, tucked away that was an overpriced expired. Now, not so much in this market, but again, if the market were to shift and now we're seeing sellers who need to be more realistic about their price, because let's face it, in the last couple of years, they've had some wiggle room for sure. But he taught me to have one overpriced expired in my bag, that if that came up and became an issue, you could pull out of your bag and you could say, well, I know that you feel like that and your home is certainly beautiful, but Mr. Fumagalli on the corner, well, he tried to list at 400,000 too, and he's been on the market 412 days. He's had 4 price reductions, and now he can't sell because the listing is stale. All of a sudden, that sets a whole new tone. And again, we didn't include it in our CMA, but we had it handy. So good market or bad, you want to be able to handle those objections. And I cannot tell you, especially when we had 6 years of inventory, how important, that really was to be able to pull that out of your bag and say, yep, I get it, I know, and we want to get the most for your home possible, but look what happens if we price it in that arena. So I always thought that was a really, really good tactic, and it's helped me many times. So I wanted to share that too. All right, so I am going to be honest, I hate these stupid little closing date calendars. They are a pain in the neck because you have to click in there. You got to click, click, click back 6 months. Here's an easier way. Let's go over here to the date range. An appraiser in this area is going to go 6 months back, no doubt. So that's what I'm going to do here. A lot of people will ask, well, you know what, Colleen, things are selling for more than their appraised value. So why do I need to know that? Well, you do need to know that, because if you get an offer at 400,000, but it's only going to appraise for 3, somebody's making up 100,000, and you better know that going in to get proof that that can come from somewhere, right? So you do want to know, even if you think it's going to sell over the appraised amount, you need to know what that appraisal amount is. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit, and we're going to also add in things like structure style. We're going to also add in important pieces like school district. Those are important because if it's got Grosse Pointe North schools, that is a lot different than just, the neighboring mile might not be able to go to that particular school. So you do want to make sure you're adding in the important things. One, the home that we're going to use as our example is a one-story home. So I'm certainly not going to compare that to a colonial, right? Also, bedrooms and bathrooms. I'm going to use a particular example that has 3 bedrooms and it has a bath and a half. So I'm going to go 2 to 3 baths. I want to make sure I'm getting enough in my counts. Also, it does have a basement. That is huge. Generally, a home with a basement is going to bring more value than a home built on a slab. Now, I say generally because waterfront is an exception to that. I'm also going to use a garage because it does have a garage. And in this market, I would strongly recommend not adding in features. And here's why. If you put in fireplace, because your home has this beautiful fireplace, and the agent, because the fireplace is not required, right? And the agent never bothered to fill out that it has a fireplace, but it does, now you've lost valuable comps. So I really, in my CMAs, unless you have so many, I'd really stay away from the features. If you've got so many comps you can't count them, then it would be okay to maybe dwindle them down with features, but really you don't want to do that in this market. What about square footage? Well, square footage, an appraiser will tell you, I have a lot of appraiser friends, they've always told me the same thing. They use what the banks are going to use, which is 20%. So when I did my homework, the square footage on this particular property was 1361. So I'm going to use the 20% rule. So I'm going to say I want to multiply that by 1361. So I come up with about 270. So basically, when I'm trying to figure out my square footage range, I'm going to say it's 1,361 square feet for this house, and I'm going to minus 270 off that. So I'm looking at 1,090 as my bottom range. Okay, so that's my 20%. So not hard. Same thing for the top though. So now what I want to do is I want to take that 1,361 and I want to add, that 270. And so that gives me my top range. So I'm going to top out about 1,600. Okay. So now we've got our 20% square footage rule. You're probably thinking, lady with the fuzzy hair, you got 7,000 comps, or I'm sorry, 5,000 comps. You're going to be there for a month presenting your CMA. Well, no, we didn't add in our most important detail, right? Location, location, location. But what I want to do is I want to do the same thing that an appraiser would do. So I'm going to go up to this search by map. And here is your first time-saving tip. When your map search opens, it's going to open to your office. So this red X always is going to be your, now you can change that in your preferences. Maybe you want it to open to an area you work in, or, maybe you put your home address in there, whatever. But I obviously want to go right to my subject property because that's where I'm going to find my comps. So here's your first time-saving tip. When you are typing in your subject address, you're going to do it up here in this top bar, but you are going to leave off the ways, the places. This happens to be Wessel Drive. You're going to leave those off. So I'm going to type in 41539. Even though it's Wessel Drive, I'm going to make it Wessel. And we do this because it uses Google Maps. I'm going to show you some cool things you can do with that. So I also want to do a comma, and I want to do the city. And the reason is it's a nationwide program. And if I just type in 41539 Wessel, I'm going to end up in Kansas because that's where it took me the first time. So there is a 41539 in Kansas, but you want to make sure you're doing comma the city. So when you click this magnifying glass, it is actually finding the subject property, which is right here. Okay. The next thing that I want to do is I want to do a 1 mile radius around that property because that's what an appraiser is going to do in that area. So I'm going to say I want to do 1 mile search radius. Make this a little bit smaller here so you can see it better. And that's going to be my radius. So now as I zoom in, you're going to notice that it breaks those little clusters apart. Let me show you what I'm talking about. You see how it's three or three? This means those flags are very close together. And if it put the flag right here and you're zoomed out, it would be really hard to kind of get behind the next flag and get behind that one. It just becomes kind of hard to navigate. So you can either zoom in, or you can simply click on that cluster and it's going to show those properties right over here to the right. Okay, so remember we've added in our active, our closed, and our pending. I'm going to say that Mary is, she's listing some property up in Rose City, because I've seen Mary take listings all over the place. So she's listing some property up in Rose City, and it's a 3.5-hour drive, and she's not going to drive all the way up there, check out the neighborhood, come back and do a CMA, and then drive all the way up there again, because she wouldn't do that. But if you wanted to see the neighborhood, is it appreciating? Is it a subdivision? Are they larger lots, smaller lots? You can actually grab this little yellow Google man that we see on just about everything these days, and it will even tell you what address you're about to drop him in front of. So if I wanted to place him in front of, let's say, my subject property, I can simply set him in front, and I now can walk down the street. I can see the home to the left. I can see the home to the right. And I can literally tour the neighborhood. I can see that they're pretty much traditional brick ranches. And I can even go in and see the specific property that I'm going to be listing. So it just allows you to kind of tour the neighborhood. If you haven't checked out our brand new Collaboration Center class, which the collab is all new. It's a brand new Collaboration Center app for your clients that shows you everything that they're looking at. They can do this, and they can also now see things like condo bylaws, rules and regs for condos. They can see sellers disclosures and lead-based paints. A lot of cool things in the new Collab Center. So definitely take that class if you haven't. All right, so now we're back to our circle here. We're starting to pull in our comps. But I'm going to use Mary again, and I'm going to say, it's really awesome. We're going to pretend that this is beautiful Lake St. Clair. And Mary is on fire, as usual, and she has listed 3 $1 million waterfront properties. So we're going to pretend just for a moment that this is beautiful Lake St. Clair. She's listed these beautiful $1 million properties. But if we bring all those waterfronts she listed into our CMA, well, it's going to radically screw up our numbers, because ours is a little brick ranch far off the water, streets and streets off the water, okay? So if that were the case, how can you simply remove, without having to go deselect a bunch of properties, how can you remove waterfront or remove a particular area that isn't like your comps? And the answer is that's when you go up to these drawing tools right up here to the top. When I click on draw, I'm just going to draw it out for you. I'm going to pretend that this is beautiful Lake St. Clair. These are the $3 million waterfronts that Mary has listed. I'm literally going to draw a shape on my shape, if you will. Now you're probably thinking, well, lady, I still see the 3 there. Well, one more step. We're going to click on edit, and we're going to change this from includes to excludes. So I don't want any comps that fall on that beautiful waterfront area, because they're not going to be like mine. I use this if you are looking, let's say you're looking in an area that is half, let's say you're looking in a subdivision that's half new construction and half like Rivergate is kind of like that. There's some 1930 style homes, and then there's this beautiful new construction. You could literally divide that in that radius, or you could use year built. That would be another way to do it. But this keeps you from bringing in a bunch of properties that you didn't really want to include in your CMA. By the way, this works for buyers too. You can have up to 15 shapes on your map. So let's use Donald again. Donald says, you know what? My buyers really like this area north of 17 and east of Hayes, but they don't want this one little corner area here. You can actually draw out exactly where they want to live and then just eliminate that one area. All right, if you make a mistake though, you can simply click X. It's going to pull it off, and now Mary's $3 million waterfront properties are back. What if you got this far though, and especially in this market, this is happening a lot. We got all the way to here, we got our 1 mile radius, but we have a problem. The problem is that we got one comp. We're going to pretend that only one comp was returned here. Or maybe you just got active and pending, you didn't get any closed, and that's what we're looking for. you can, instead of having to go up here and you could type in 1.75 or 2 or 2.25, you could actually increase your radius, but maybe you just want to pull this out a little bit to see if there's anything right on the fringe right here that you can use. Let me show you how to do that. I'm going to go to the shape. I'm going to click on it, and that's going to give me the ability to drag this open just a little bit more. And you can see that actually happened. We had one $300,000 comp we wouldn't have gotten just at 1 mile. So if you haven't gotten the comps that you need, or you didn't get any sold comps, don't be afraid to just kind of drag your circle out. One thing I did want to point out, because I know I'm going through a lot of information today, I am recording this whole class. So after today, it takes about 24 hours for me to get it uploaded and, on our channel. I'm going to show you as we end our class today where you can find this class recording. So if you miss anything along the way, you can go back, you can play this class recording again, and I'm also going to show you where you can find some helpful cheat sheets. And so I'll show all of that at the end. Let's see if we got a question. Let's take a look. Okay, so really good question. Thank you, Donald, for asking good questions today. When I do a search radius for 1 mile, it says that there are over 1,000 search comparables, and that's of course going to be too big to display. And by the way, if you did try to display it, it would take forever to show up on your map. So when you're doing that, you want to have some more search criteria in at that point. You want to map after you've gotten some of the basics in. So let's go back. So remember, you can go backward and forward by just using these little tabs right here. So I can jump from my map. So it's for Donald's example, he's got 3,000, like we're just going to use 3,000. He's got 3,000 comps. Well, that's going to be too many to display. So we don't want that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our criteria first, and we're going to start putting in what's going to be important. Single family, for sale, closed. My guess is, Donald, you did not select the 6 months back, because if you're getting that many comps, you're probably going back in the history forever. So you do want to make sure you've got 6 months selected here, or you will get too many comps. You also want to make sure you've got your structure style. You want to make sure you've got your school district, your bedrooms, bathrooms, and if it has a basement or garage, you want to have that input first. That, if you just do the map first, the problem is it's going to be too many. You're going to get everything, right? And you don't want to do that. You just want to get what you're filtering on. And my guess is, Donald, is that this is the piece you missed. And that would be the 6 months back. Because if I take it out, see, I got 577. That would be wrong. So I want to go ahead and I want to put that back, and I want to have my criteria 6 months. Now I'm getting to the right number of comps. So hopefully that helps. I'm guessing that's what it was. All right. No problem. No problem. I'm glad that helped. Yeah, it's usually this one little piece that trips people up. So, by the way, if you ever wonder what you've added to that point, just look under your criteria summary here, and it will show you exactly what you've got in here. I also have my square footage range. So mine may be a little bit different. Again, I changed my radius shape. So even Donald's question was, well, I put in the same thing, but remember, I kind of moved my radius out a little bit. I added a couple, so it might be slightly different. But if you've got all of this in here, it should be pretty close. Okay. All right, so moving on from here, and I like, this is an enhancement they just made not that long ago, where you can just jump from one to the other. Because a lot of times, you know, and this one would get me every darn time. I get all the way to this step, and I forget to take out the stupid leases. There's a little toggle right here. Do you want to show all for rent or for sale? And I get all the way to the map, and I get all these dumb leases, and I get so mad at myself. So remember, those are the criteria that you want to add in first. If you try to map first, it's almost always going to give you an error because it's mapping everything with no criteria. So it doesn't filter down. It's too many to see at one time. So hopefully that helps. Okay. So let's run our search. Let's see what we got. Now, again, I would probably even add a little bit more criteria if I had too many, but really the goal is to have 3 to 5 closed comps, as well as all your actives and pendings. Now, if anybody knows me, there's a few people on this call who know me pretty well. I have a little OCD, so when I look at this, it just makes me cringe. It's all disorganized. I just don't love it. So what I do, a little tip, again, I'm trying to give you all the tips I wish somebody would have taught me forever ago. It's kind of how I designed this class. I wish I would have known you could do this. When you're looking at your search results, at the top of each column it's kind of like an Excel spreadsheet, if you think of it that way, which sounds hard, but it's really not. What I mean is the top of every column, if I want to see actives with actives, pendings with pendings, and closed with closed, I simply click on status. Now it's sorted. I can see I have one active. I have, let's see how many pending. I have 5 pending in that neighborhood. So I'm going to go ahead and select those. Now I would have put probably a little bit more criteria because I have a few too many closed, but I would now go through these and I would see, are they apples to apples? Another thing I probably would have added in, as you can kind of see, we're all over the board here. I probably would have done a year built, which would get rid of some of the newer construction ones. But in this case, just to keep us on course for our class, I'm going to go right up here at the top, and I can see the average sold price right now is about $2.99. And just for the sake of time, again, I would have probably filtered these down just a little bit more with a little bit more criteria, but I don't want to keep you here all day on this part. So I'm going to do the one that I'm going to grab 5 closed comps. I'm going to say I went through these. Oh, I'm going to add my buddy Louis Gazoul here. We'll use his. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say these are the 5 comps that are the closest, that look similar, that have all the similar qualities. But now my OCD still would be like, whoa, this is a mess. You got some you're using, some you're not. I hate that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to work with the ones I selected. So I'm going to hit this checked button at the top. And now I'm just working with the ones that I really want to. All right, if you remember nothing else in this class, except that lady has fuzzy hair, if you remember nothing else in this class, this next piece is the one you want to remember. And it's the easy button. We're all looking for the easy button, right? So we have our comparables. Now we want to take them and we just want to push them into our template. So how do we do that? That's the easy button. That easy button is going to be located right in your toolbar. And it's in the way of this actions. It looks like a little plug. And that's really what it's designed to do. Plug these properties in to another. So I'm going to click the actions button. And I'm going to plug them into Cloud CMA. And I'm simply going to now give my CMA a title. So I'm going to call this my CMA for Sally the Seller. All right, here's another cool thing. Just by clicking that button, it brought in all of these comparables for me right down here. By the way, never use this quick and dirty. I'm going to show you what it's for later, but don't use this on your CMAs. You will not like it, I promise. But what I do want to do is I want to pull some information for my subject property. So I am going to put in 41539 Russell. As I start to type that, it's going to fill in the tax information for me. So it's going to basically look for the property record, and it's going to start to fill those details in. So it's basically saying, hey, what's the public record for this, and can I pull some data? It doesn't fill in the square footage because a lot of times that's not right in public data anyway. And I happen to know this does have 2 baths, so I'm actually going to change this to 2. Now, if I don't add a front cover, it's going to give me a yucky Google overhead shot, and I don't love those. So if you're like me, I want to get the most bang for my buck. I want to be able to put a nice cover on there without having to do any work. So where I'm going to pull my cover from, and I'm going to show you how to get this in just a second, is I'm actually going to use the public records photo in either BS&A. Sometimes you can find it in Google. Sometimes you can find it in RPR. But I want to add a front cover for my CMA. So I'm going to say that I saved one to my desktop, which I did right before our class. And I now want to pull in that photo. You can crop it. As you can see, it's got an ugly date on it. So if I wanted to crop that photo, there's a little crop at the bottom, and I can actually take that yucky date out and hit crop. And it's now going to give me that front cover. And I'm going to show you where you can find this too. Okay, so now I've got my front cover. The next thing I want to do is I want to follow, it's basically 3 tabs that we're going through. The first is really, what do you want to name it? You can put notes in here if you want. Maybe it's a referral and you want to remind yourself to, pay out that referral at the end of the deal. So you could put that right in here. You're really just now going to customize it, and you're going to see the listings in case you want to make any changes. This last step where it says publish, this is just save. That's all publishes. There's nothing you have to do. You're just saving it. So let's take a look at the first step. We're going to click Fetch Listings. And what's going to do is it's going to pull that listing data into kind of an agent-friendly report where I can see all the properties that I chose. I can see 1 active came over. There are 5 pending and 5 sold. Right down here, it's doing my little mini CMA breakdown for me. But here's what I like, and this is actually very new. If you wanted to put a lower priced comp first, or maybe you wanted to sort these, you can actually drag and drop them into the order you want. Maybe you want to start with your actives. You could actually sort it by status. You could sort it by price. I usually like to do actives first, then pending, then our closed, so they can see where we got our closed number. But, let's say we're looking at this and we see that this 345 seems a little high. Maybe we decided, I'm not going to use that comp. This happens to me all the time. I'm looking at it. This is not going to be the one I select. You can simply deselect it without having to start over. It grays it out, and now it's not going to use that in your numbers. Maybe you wanted to take a little closer look at it. You can actually open up this notes and adjustments section. And this is where you could actually add your own notes. So yes, it's bringing over the notes from the MLS, but maybe you wanted to put in, this home only has a 1-car garage and yours has a 2. Or, maybe this was the only home in the neighborhood. It sold for more because it had an attached garage, something like that. So you can actually put in notes, just like we used to do with the old Post-it notes, if you will. You can actually put in notes here. So as you're going through it with the seller, it kind of reminds you, hey, I should ask, about this, or hey, I should ask about that. I used to do it with Post-it notes, but half of them would fall off. It was kind of frustrating. So this is just an easy way that you can still go through and make notes on maybe why a property closed for more or for less. All right. I see I got another question here. Okay, well, then I'm going to have to look at it. It's something in your criteria is different. It's probably your radius search is what I'm guessing. All right, so moving forward, what about positive and negative adjustments? So if this home, as I mentioned, is the only home that has a garage, or maybe your subject property is the only one that doesn't have a garage, and you need to figure out what that positive or negative adjustment is. Now, again, if I was that really cool Joanna Gaines, I could probably just walk in and figure it out in my head, but I'm not, so I need a tool. The tool that I'm going to show you next is not a tool that the MLS provides, but it is a tool that everybody on this call has, and it's called RPR. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not a huge RPR fan. You can do a CMA and RPR. I think it stinks because you can't compare enough detail. And what I mean by that is they give you certain fields like bedroom, bathroom, the basics. But sometimes, even in a hard to comp area, I might want to compare a brick ranch to a brick ranch, right? And it doesn't give you that ability. You can't choose exterior feature. I like that in the MLS, I can use all of those features, all of those fields to filter things out. So I'm not a huge RPR fan when it comes to the CMA, but I do really like the NAR tool that shows you adjustments based on that specific property. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Under resources, you will find the RPR link. This basically just takes you to RPR. Now, do not call me and say I don't know my password, because we cannot help you with that. It is a NAR tool. It's not an MLS tool. All those we can help you with. But RPR, when you click on it, is going to take you basically into what they call the Realtor Property Resource. And how it works is it's parcel specific. So all you're going to do is you are going to enter up here the address, And as you start to type it out, it's going to quick fill for you. Okay, because first we got to find the parcel to be able to do those adjustments. So there's our trustee 41539. We can see it has 2 baths. We can see 3 bedrooms. We can see the square footage. We can see the lot size. I mean, all of that is right here. However, what we want to do is we want to find a refined value model, meaning we want to use a tool that's going to show us what is that kitchen remodel worth. And they're doing some more and adding even more to this. But here's basically how this works. So let's say your homeowner, we're going to use Mary again. Let's say Mary's talking to her seller and the seller says, well, Mary, we just put in 50 grand into this beautiful kitchen. We think that should probably make our value go up about 100,000. And that's sometimes how they think, right? So how do we give them something? How do we give them an actual piece of paper that's going to show them that that's not the real case? And why I say that is Floyd Wickman was, and again, huge fan of his. He always would say, don't tell your seller anything. Show them everything. If you want to win the listing every time, don't give them your opinion. They don't care yet. They want to know that you care about them, that you're trying to get them the most amount of money, but they want to see it on paper. And this is what it allows you to do. So we're going to use Mary. Mary says, well, okay, so you spent $50,000 on a kitchen remodel. Now, of course, there's different levels. If they put in cheap IKEA cabinetry, then it's probably not going to be an upscale. It might be a mid-range. But I'm going to say I'm just going to grab an easy one. We're going to do an upscale kitchen remodel. And obviously, the older the remodel, the less it's going to be worth. So if they did it in 2008, it's not going to be worth as much as if they did it this year, right? That makes sense. By the way, it does give you an idea of what they would consider an upscale, you know, that they're going to use stone countertops. They're going to be the basics, that they have good, maybe a built-in microwave, maybe wall ovens, built-ins, things like that. And then when did they do that? So I'm going to say that they did that this year. We're going to say that they did it in January. And they put, we use 20,000. They put 20,000 into it. Now, what is it going to bring on that specific home? Because again, if we did this on a California home, it's going to be way, way different. So let's go in and add that improvement. I now get a tangible value that I can do a report. There's a report style. And I can show them, well, actually, I know you spent 20 grand. It's not going to be worth 75 like you think. It's only really the actual value is going to be about $5,680. So it's designed to not make you the bad guy. You have a tool that many people, don't get me wrong, is it infallible? No. It also depends on the home. I mean, you know, does the whole home need to be updated? That's going to be a factor. But at least it gives you a starting point. I never knew what the starting point was. And for me, it was really hard to know what value does a garage bring? What value, you know, does a kitchen remodel bring? And so this was at least a way I could go in and get a starting point to make those adjustments. Okay. So if I were to do a negative adjustment, let's say doesn't have a garage, I can simply go to this value, do a negative in front, and create that $2,500 negative adjustment. Positive, you just leave off that that little negative sign, and you could go ahead and do a positive adjustment as well. So just a way that you can go in. I'm going to be honest, I usually do that in notes. The price is the price. I'm not going to adjust the price, but I might tell you why it closed for more or why it closed for less. So generally I do that right up here, but it's just personal preference. I just like everything to be in the notes as I'm going through it. Okay, so again, you can sort them. There is a seller's net sheet. Now, I always do a seller's net sheet. Every seller that every seller I've ever sat with, I've always said, okay, here's what you can expect. And I usually am pretty good. I usually can get within about $50 of what the check or the draft is going to be, right? But what happens in this net sheet that I don't like, and the reason I don't use it, I actually use the net sheet in Transaction Desk. There's a net sheet in Zipform, works the same way. I like that one because it does all the math for me. And everything's right there, and it calculates a lot of it for me, so I don't have to think about it. The one in here, you can save items, but you always got to do the math. I didn't care for it as much, I'll be totally honest. So I just pull mine in from Zipform or from Transaction Desk, and I put it in my CMA. I still have it in here. I just don't care for this particular one. But let's say you had Mary walked into that same home with the Grover blue carpeting, the fag carpeting, and maybe she wants to now do a price range. Maybe she doesn't just want to say, okay, here's the price based on the comps. Maybe because she knows it needs some updating. You can actually set a price range. So maybe we want to set our price range at 290 to 310. So maybe we're going to give them a price range. Maybe we're going to suggest a couple things like, the carpeting being done. I want to give them a range if they do that. So you can actually put a suggested list price in or even a price range. And I'll show you how that looks in just a moment. All right. So moving forward, next we're going to customize our report. Now on average, really there's nothing you have to do. If you wanted to do adjustments, you can. If you don't need any adjustments, you don't have to. I'm showing you a lot of different things, but on average, remember, this should be taking you about 7 to 9 minutes. Okay, next up. What do you want to be in your CMA? And this is really the last step before we save it. It's really, how do we want our report to look? I love the modern themes. There is just about a color for every brokerage. There are tons of different themes. By the way, if you're on this call and you are with Remax or Real Estate One, they have paid a lot of money to create an entire custom library in here for you. So you will see a Real Estate One library with all kind of pages, talking about who they are, their stats in the market. And so if you're with Real Estate One or Remax, you get an extra advantage because they have a whole library that's available to you that the rest don't get to use. I thought that was kind of cool. The layout. How do you want so the theme is really just your company colors. You want to check that though, because I've had people show up with the Remax balloon who work for Century 21. That is not the plan. So you do want to make sure that you're picking your company colors so it looks consistent. Next, we're going to go to the layout. And that's how do you want the comparables? This is not the report layout. This is how do you want to stack up your comparables. Down here, if you're printing it and you don't want to use a lot of paper and a lot of ink, you might want to just do a 4-column comparison. That puts all the properties right in 4 columns here, or if it's 8 properties, it would be 2 pages, but it stacks them side by side. I personally don't like that. I like the photo with max data. That's the one I always select, but it's just personal preference. The photo with max data gives you a lot more information. So if they ask questions about a particular property, I can see that. Now, there's different ways that you can pick different covers, what you want the cover to say. There's also some upsells, like every other product. There's upsells that you can choose. Realtor.com has a whole little listing kit. There's Power Pack pages from Tom Ferry. I tried a few of them. I didn't really think it was worth the upsell personally, but that was just me. Here is really everything on this white page, this CMA report, is everything that right now would go into my report. If I want something additional that's not there, I could literally go to the left-hand side and add it in. Let me show you one that I would make sure is there. I like to have all of the photos. So I would go to the listing section, hit the plus, and that's going to add in all the photos. I always like all the photos to be included. You can also add your own custom pages here. I'm going to show you a few, and I'm going to show you ones that I made that you are more than welcome to use. You can reach out to me, or I'm going to show you where you can get them at the end. But what I think is that it's really helpful to have some marketing sets you apart, because everybody gets cloud, right? What sets you apart from the agent next to you? And it's really doing your homework on the properties, bringing in things like the tax information, the market stats information about what's going on in their area. I want to have all of that. So let me show you a few examples that I've created that I'll be happy to share with you if you'd like them. One is sites. The other is our marketing material. And I'm going to show you one more example that I use quite often. And it's I teach a lot of classes, got a lot of stuff in here. Sometimes I put the city certs if I had to do a city certs application, or they're going to have to pay for city certs or something like that. So a lot of times I'll put that in there. I like to be able to show them everything without having to tell them anything. So let me show you some examples. So one example is a common question they always ask me is, Colleen, is my house going to be on Zillow? Is it going to be on Realtor.com? So what I did is I created a 2-page flyer with all the places that most brokers syndicate it to. Now, please do check with your broker. Some brokers don't want their listings to go to Zillow. So then this would not be the page you would want to use, right? But the bottom section is open and you can actually add your contact information and your photo. So it is editable. But this was a question I got asked every time I was on a listing appointment. So I'm like, well, that's stupid. I'm just going to put this page, which I just simply made in Canva the other day. I'm going to put this page right in my presentation. So if you're interested in a copy or you want me to customize it and send it to you, just let me know in the questions and I'll be happy. If you send me over your contact information and a photo, I'll be happy to get that done for you. The other thing I like to do is I like to have a marketing plan. I think it's really helpful, especially if they're first-time sellers. I think it's really helpful to show them what you're going to be doing to market their home. A lot of people now call this a value proposition after the NAR MLS lawsuit and how we now don't have commissions in the MLS any longer. So a lot of people are saying, well, we need to show our sellers our value. And so what are we going to be doing? So I just kind of created this, and you can edit this as well. But these are the standard things that I'm going to make sure that their home gets entered into the MLS within 2 business days. If it's coming soon, that's a 1 business day, but reminds me to talk about it here. Your listing will be visible to 97% of the state of Michigan, to their agents. And of course, it's going to be going out on syndication sites. We're going to make sure that they get a sign installed. Again, if they have an HOA that doesn't allow signs, that would not be applicable. But we're going to make sure that I always like to still do the old-fashioned flyer boxes myself, that we're going to do flyers and feature sheets, that we're going to schedule a realtor broker open, that we're going to do social media advertising. So these are all common steps. Again, you can edit if there's something that you want to add, but if you're interested in either one of these, and again, the bottom is just completely customizable, so you're going to put in your information, but it just allows you to have some extra marketing pieces. Another thing that I was challenged with recently is I listed a home, and the owner of the home bought like 5 homes in a row on this particular block in Warren, and he had never seen them. He just used it as an income to rent out. So he asked me to go and look at this particular home. He wanted to sell it. The tenants had moved out. But when I got there, it was just an absolute mess. And they had obviously left pets in there. There was water running over the floor. When I got there, some of the pipes were gone. I mean, it's just a mess. So of course I didn't want to tell him, it's just a mess, right? Because that's an opinion. I want to show them. So what I did is I simply took photos. Actually, smart one. I took photos of the property. It was called condition of property. I thought that was the one, but maybe a little bit. Yeah, this one. Sorry. I took photos of the property and I put them. I just pasted them into a Word doc, and then I pulled them into Cloud. So the first thing I noticed when I was walking up to this property is it had no C of O. Nobody could live there, and they weren't supposed to be. Even the tenants weren't supposed to be living there because that was before the tenants moved out. So long story short, this is a lot of the junk and debris that was left inside, that they had stole this cupboard right off the wall. There was water literally running over the area over here, which had ruined the floor. And it needed a lot of work. But instead of me telling him, this was where they obviously kept the dogs, not the nicest picture, sorry about that. But the whole idea is, instead of me telling him, yeah, this is going to take a little bit of work, it was a way for me just to pull those photos in. Another thing that I always add in is I always want to tell them when I'm going through their CMA what's going on in their market. And we always want to educate them because we want them to know why we're suggesting the price that we are. So that I do with market stats, and I'll show you where to find that in just a second. When I'm going through my CMA, and it's kind of a good example, you can pull it either on the county or the city or both. It's literally 2 clicks to create this. But I like to show them where they are in their market right now. So on the house I just listed, I said, you know what? It's always going to be 1 month behind, just so you know. It's a rolling month behind because they have to gather all the data for that month, right? So the month ends, they gather all the data, so it's always 1 month behind. But what I wanted to show her is that there were 66 homes on the market last year, only 62 this year. So we're still seeing a negative of about 6%. But we're not seeing those giant leaps at least in this city. Our average sales price went from 611 to 542. And what we're seeing in some of these cities is, right, we're seeing a little more level out. It used to be we were seeing if there was a negative inventory amount and still so many buyers, we were seeing buyers paying so much more for those properties. So we were seeing average sales going up of 50, 70, sometimes $100,000 in 1 year. Now we're not seeing that here. And so, but you want to go ahead and you want to educate them. Condos, by the way, are listed separately at the bottom. This also shows how long they can expect to be on market. Days till sale, days till pending. So I like to present this to the seller. And again, you can do one for the city they live in as well as the county, just kind of showing what the overall is. You can see for Macomb County, they're up almost 10% in their inventory from last year. You know, there were no homes on the market. That's why we're seeing those staggering amounts, but our average sales price holding steady. Our median sales price even went up a little bit. So these are things I like to include in my CMA. This is what sets us apart, right? The homework we're doing. Other things I like to include in my CMA is if it was listed in the MLS, I like to pull in the old listing ticket. So I want to show them I did my homework. I'm going to show them, I see you bought last year, you paid this, there were $3,000 in concessions, and you bought it on an FHA loan. So I like to have that in here when we're discussing it, because they may want to tell me something about that, right? Or yeah, my mom gave me the down payment, or yeah, we bought it on a VA, and that's how we're going to buy our next house. I like to know that stuff when I'm going through it with them. The other thing is I like to include the tax information from public records. So I'll show you this one. I like to bring the BS&A records in, talking about the house. If they ask me where I got the square footage, I want to be able to show that. I want to be able to say, well, actually, I got your square footage, and I see that all of your taxes are up to date. And I got your square footage from BS&A. I also like to pull in the permits. For this particular home, I was kind of wondering why there were all these permits. Sometimes it can be that they had a fire and the city had to come out and do a re-inspect. But in this particular case, the permits were all from the 50 grand he had just put into the hardscape on this home. But I like to have that in here because it helped me ask that question. And I said, so I see you pulled a bunch of permits. What were these for? And he's like, oh, let me show you, So having those things in here, I think are extremely helpful. I had one situation where this really nice lady, she called me and said, hey, can you come and list my condo? It was previously her mother had passed and she'd never owned a home. And so we're going through the CMA and she said to me, I don't know how anybody can live here. And it's like Clinton Township. It was 10. Well, what do you mean? She says, the taxes are so incredibly high. I don't know how anyone can afford anything here. And I'm like, didn't sound right. So when I'm doing her CMA, I pulled the tax record, and sure enough, I mean, there were all these outstanding taxes, 9,000, 7,000. I mean, it was kind of insane. And so I sat with her and I said, well, you said this is your only home, right? You don't own anything else in Michigan. She said, no, I don't own anything else anywhere. This is, my home. And it turns out it was never homesteaded. So as it was passed to her, so it was a simple call we made to the city. And I actually drove her down there because we talked to the assessor. He said, come on down, we'll take a look right now. They did, and they rebated almost all of the taxes. And so she did end up still selling, but she became a client for life that way because you went the extra mile. You were able to ask those questions going through your CMA, and now you were able to handle a problem for her. So just a gem of a lady, and it all worked out great. Things like unpaid water bills, you can now see those in the municipalities. And if you don't know how to find those records, let me show you real quick. If you are looking, I'm just going to grab one and show you where you can find that. If you are looking at a listing in the MLS, you can go right to this. It kind of looks like a little garbage can, if you will. I'm sorry to say, but if you click on that, that will take you into the property record. I always like to add this into my CMA. So as you can see, it took me right into this. I actually go right up here to the print button. I save this as a PDF, and then I pull it into my CMA. This is also where I get that front photo. Remember I said I use the public records. Now, Please do not get me wrong. You do not want to use the BSNA picture for marketing. This is really just for a cover that you and your seller are going to see. We have very strict copyright rules. You can't steal anybody else's photos in the MLS. You can't steal their virtual tours. And I am not marketing this in any way. I just want to create a cover that's going to look like their home. I don't want that ugly Google overhead shot. But I save this. I simply right click on it, and where it says save image as, I will save that, and that way I can pull it right in when I'm doing that front cover. So all just little tips and tricks. The other thing I like to add in, one more last thing, I like to add in the realist record. And you're probably thinking, well, BSNA, that's a better source. And you're right. BSNA is the trusted legal source. It's the actual assessor's record. That's the one you want to make sure you have in here, whatever the assessor says about the property. That's the one a judge would use if there was a legal dispute. However, I like to also include the realist record because sometimes it brings up discrepancies. It also shows if the property's in sheriff sale. That little red button, let me show you where I got that. It's located here and here. If you click on that little red button, you can see all the detail that it's providing. And down here, if I want to see, yes, it has a porch, it's got a garage, how many car garage, but every once in a while you'll see a discrepancy between what's in the MLS and the actual tax record, and it'll say that here. So I also bring this in. You can see this was transferred by a quitclaim deed. This was by a fiduciary deed. You can see that they refied down here. And again, this is also where you would see if there was a sheriff sale that had been done. So these are all great tools to have right in your CMA. So I know I've talked a lot to you. I've given you a lot of information. The very last step here is if there's something you don't want in your CMA report, you're simply going to click that minus button. That is going to remove that particular item so that it is not there. I also like the summary always to be at the end. I want to give them all the details first and then follow up with the summary. So you can put these in whatever order you want. Okay, I don't prefer to have all the marketing pieces personally, like the notes, you can have your client testimonials in here. I just really want to give them the meat and potatoes, what's going on in your area, where what the stats are, where the property taxes said, their square footage was, if they owe outstanding water bills, or if they have outstanding tax. I want to have all of that in here. Then last, I'm going to take out a lot of these pieces because I'm not as I mentioned, they have a lot of great pieces. I want you to be able to see them. If you like them, certainly use them. I'm just not a fan of everything. Now, once you've got your report set up, and I wanted to show you everything, but for me, I have my own template. So once you've got your report set up and you've got all your stuff in that you want to show them, your sites, your tax information or whatever, you can also set up a template. So I can go to this template and I can say, I want to save this. I'm going to call this Colleen's Awesome CMA template. And now I can save. That becomes my template that anytime I want to do a CMA, it will revert to the last one you've done. So you don't have to do this every time. But if there's a particular one that you're really proud of and you think, wow, I want to have that set up, save it as a template in here. They have some ones that they did for you. But you can see I've done a lot of custom ones. We've named them for different people that I've helped do CMAs. So you can create as many templates as you want. There's no limit. But you do want to bring in those outside pages. The last thing you do is simply hit publish, and now your CMA is going to be created. Takes about 30 seconds to generate your CMA. Someone did ask, well, if you wanted to share that out onto Facebook, you can copy the link and share it out on Facebook. I really don't know why you would share that on Facebook personally, but if you wanted to share it on Messenger, maybe to that person directly, or you wanted to limit your audience to just that person, that would kind of make sense. You can also copy the new link, or you could simply email that report to that person. So all of those sharing options, as I mentioned, are going to be right here. So again, it does take about 30 seconds to publish that report. And then when I'm ready to view it, just as we started off, you can click View PDF. You can see it's done now. I'm going to click View PDF. It generates that PDF, and now I'm ready to present that out to my seller. So this is the exact one we just made. So I have to do it full screen here. And as you can see, I can now go through it. I have all those interior photos. So if they ask me again, is the basement finished? I can say, well, it's partially finished. I think I would probably say for that. But it allows me to see all those extra photos. So that's why I like the photos and max data. And I do include all of the photos so that if they do ask me a question, I've got a little more right in front of me that I can answer. And then at the end, we have our summary. Looks like somebody used Kubicasa, one of my other favorite tools. And I'm gonna just kind of jump down to the end just so you can see it. Here's our price range. Remember how we did our subject price range? And average 24 days on market. Our selling price is just under asking, so that's good. Our price per square foot. And then again, you can decide if you wanted to use these particular marketing pieces. So that is it. Now I know I have thrown a lot of information your way. As we wrap up, I want to show where you can find those market stats real quick. And then I want to show you where you can find support as well as this recorded class. So bear with me one more minute and we'll knock those out. Market stats, those cool graphs that show exactly what's going on in their city, and it's super easy to use. You're going to go to resources, and under social media and lead gen, you'll see something called market stats. This is where I want to tell that homeowner exactly what's going on in their city as well as maybe their county. So I'm going to go to stats. I just want fast and easy. I want it to think for me. Clicking on fast stats. Selecting the county that I'm going to go on my listing appointment in. Let's use Sterling Heights for this one. I'm going to click on Sterling Heights, and that's it. Literally, you're clicking the county and the city. The stats are then generated. Again, there'll always be a rolling month behind, but I can see here that we're down about 3%. Our average sales price went up slightly from 353 to 357. Our days on market taking a little bit longer. But all of that is captured. Condos, of course, are below. And I save this and I pull that into my CMA. And you're probably thinking, well, once you save it on your computer, how do you get it into the CMA? Well, good question. What you're going to do to create those custom pages is right up here where you see my picture, my little avatar up here, might be your initials if you haven't added a photo. In Cloud CMA, when you click on that, it says custom pages. In the GoToWebinar panel, I have actually attached a cheat sheet or checklist on exactly how to create custom pages. So if you open that up, you can save it to your desktop. I'll show you where you can find it too. These are all different custom pages that you can go in and customize. Maybe you've got some client testimonials you want to add in. You can hit enter, you can put in links, you can put in movies. Maybe you've got a listing paperwork overview that you want to share with them of what they can expect. You can add all of those in. As I go forward, those custom pages like the market stats or adding those property photos or the tax records or BS&A, you can see I've got quite a few in here. To do that, or maybe even your net sheet. Remember how I said I actually do my net sheet in Transaction Desk and I pull it in? I want them to know exactly what they're going to net out. So I actually have that right in the CMA. However, to add those pieces in, right down here at the bottom, should probably take some of these out so it's not so long. All you have to do is click Upload a PDF, find on your computer where it's stored, pull it in, and it takes mere seconds. Now you can add that to any of your CMAs because it's under custom pages. So let's say you wanted to add those really cool sites, that really cool sites page to your CMA. When doing any CMA, let's say I want to go back and edit the one we just made. Maybe I found another comp, or maybe I want to add a custom page in. I'm just going to open up that CMA. And now I want to add that in. So I go to my custom pages. Here's everything I've pulled in. They're always, the last ones are always at the bottom. So if I wanted to pull that seller's net in or wanted to pull in one of those custom site pages, I'm just going to click on it. And now that's pulled in. Okay, so hopefully that helps. I know it was a lot of information. So if you're like me, by now you're like, whew, remember, I went through everything and anything you could do in here, but on average, it should be taking you about 7 to 9 minutes because you don't have to customize it. You just do it once and the rest is set for you. However, let's say that it's 8 o'clock at night and you need some help and you got stuck somewhere. Well, remember, you get free tech support 7 days a week from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. So there is a page right in the MLS that says help right up here. If you click on that help, it'll give you the phone number where you can talk to a real life person like me, and we will help you out and get you. Because sometimes you get a 9 a.m. listing appointment and you're hung up on something, and so tech support is here for just that resource. On top of that, as I mentioned, I did record this class, so let me show you where you can find it. We try to keep all of your great tools under resources. So you're going to go to resources and you're going to go to the education section right here. And that's where you're going to find recorded webinars. What I tell people, the easiest thing, it just basically opens up our YouTube channel. I tell people just click on the video links here. You can see all of our classes. Maybe you're looking for our popular class, the tools for tackling low inventory. Just kind of want to see what tools should I be using to go out and get new listings. Maybe you want to check out that all new Collaboration Center class. All you have to do is click on the class. I put the dates right afterwards so you can watch this specific class. If you're looking to attend some other classes, and we've got some really unique stuff coming up here, under resources, you will also find our education corner. This is an entire class list. All you have to do is flip through this really cool catalog. This is a great class if you haven't taken it, how to find property records using RealList and BSNA. All of our classes are free. This is also a very, very cool cool new class, and it's real estate photography. This is actually taught by Taylor Fedewall. She has a degree in photography and communication. And what she does is she teaches a 3-part class. The first one is how to take better photos. I thought I took pretty good photos, to be honest. I was kind of embarrassed when I took her class because she showed me things that I had no idea. Like whenever I would take a hallway or a bridgeway, it looked short and stumpy, like you couldn't tell how elongated it was. And then she showed me how to add more light, controlling my shutter speed, basically keeping the shutter open longer to elongate those shots, which I never knew was very cool. The other thing I was famous for is if I was in a little tiny powder room, you know how sometimes it's real small, you either get yourself in the mirror or you get the toilet front and center, which is never a nice shot. She'll actually show you some patented techniques like angling off the counter into the mirror to get the entire room. That's in part 2. Part 3 is an actual field trip. It's really fun. I've done it a couple times now. She takes you to a fully furnished $1 million Lombardo model, and she sets you up in 7 hard to photograph areas. And then she gives you 15 minutes. You then shoot those areas, and then she comes back and she critiques your shot and shows you how to make each one of them better, which I thought was very cool. So it's very hands-on. All of our classes, again, are free. All you need to do to sign up is simply click on the register here, and it will set you up just like for today's class. Okay. Let's see. We've got a few questions in here. I think some of these are pretty much already answered. How do we add a BSNA? Well, BSNA again would be showing up on the listing itself. BSNA is a little icon right here. Keep in mind if you're coming in from one of our vendored MLSs, meaning maybe you belong to the Upper Peninsula, maybe you belong to Bay County Realtors, maybe you belong to Midland Board of Realtors. If you belong to another MLS, they may not have BSNA integration like this. If you're a My Realtors member, you'll see it just like this. If you belong to another neighboring MLS that we vendor, you may not see that particular icon. So I apologize. Every MLS has different products and tools that they offer. But you should, if you're a My Realtors member, you should see that right front center. If you can't find it there, there's also a tax button. Right up here at the top. Mine kind of looks like a popsicle with that summer theme, and you should be able to find great tax information there too. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. I hope this helped. I hope you can go out and list some properties. We certainly need the inventory. There will be a survey coming out after the class. We'd love to know what you thought about the class. I know there's still a couple questions. I'll probably have to reach out to you, Donald, because I know there's a couple questions you have, but I think it comes down to what you've got in your search criteria. Or if you are with Midland, you would get a different amount of properties because they don't data share with anybody. So those can be some differences. However, I appreciate y'all hanging in there with me. I hope you have a great day. Happy selling. Please go list some properties so we have some more inventory. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.